regulations of financial institutions. But before that, let me give a bit background about myself, right? I'm in the financial industry for the past, I think, about 21 year plus. And along the years, I've been in I was an internal audit, I was an investigating officer, and for the past 10 years, I am a compliance officer for a few commercial banks, a government agency, and also a regulator. Yeah. And talking about, I mean, I understand that there's no foreign students here in this particular class, right? So throughout the session, I may speak in both languages, Bahasa, English, interchangeably. And if you have any questions, please stop me and ask your questions, and I'll try to answer your questions as best as I can. Right. Without further ado, right, let me go to the slides. Okay. Today, I think it is a bit, dry, right? The topic today is regulation of financial institutions, right? You know that I think previously your lecturers have explained to you guys that banking regulation, banking industries is a highly regulated industries. You know why? Because we are the gatekeeper of the nation's wealth, of your deposit, of all the loans, of all the credit requirements, of all the whatever related to financial, whatever related to economies, nation economies, as well as as well as economies of the those laymen, everything, corporates, everything. So that's why financial institutions are highly regulated. Okay. Just to give you an overview, right? Just bear in mind, our financial environment, right, is not only confined to commercial banks, right? There are other entities or parties that involve the overall shaping our financial environment. Like for example, like I said just now, right? It's not only focusing on commercial banks. We have investment banks, we have stockbroking, we have money brokers, we have exchanges, right? We have money changers, and all these are governed under our financial environment, right? But on today's topic, we are focusing more on those regulations that govern commercial banks, right? We are going to talk about the commercial banks, Central Bank Acts. We are going to talk about the Financial Services Act, Islamic Financial Services Act, and the rest, like for example, the anti-money laundering. Later, I'll explain to you, right? So, what is Bank Negara Malaysia is the so-called regulators of our commercial banks here in Malaysia. Not only commercial banks, yeah, just it covers most of it. Besides Bank Negara, right, just to share with you guys, there is another regulators that control the other side of our nation's financial markets. It's called Securities Commission Malaysia. But again, I'll be focusing on Bank Negara here, right? So Bank Negara acts in the interest of the nation and without regard to profit as a primary consideration. So Bank Negara is not like a local bank. It's not like a commercial bank. They are here to provide the regulatory framework, and then they are not profit oriented. They are more like a watchdog for all the commercial banks and our banking environment. Right. So these are the legislation administered and enforced by Bank Negara. Right.
So share your screen with us.
You cannot see the slide, huh?
Okay,
sorry about that. Hold on, yeah. Give me a sec.
Okay tak? Or you want me to share?
I think better you share lah.
Okay, sekejap If not move the slide, just let me know. So is this okay?
Okay, sure.
Okay.
All right. So we are at the first slide here. Sorry about that. Sorry about the technical glitch just now, right? So as I said earlier, banking is the most highly regulated industries. Then as I said, Bank Negara acts in the interest of nation without regard to profit as primary consideration. You see, as Bank Negara is not a commercial bank. They are regulators. Their primary consideration, they are not profit oriented. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so this, as you can see from the screen, right? These are the primary legislation administered and enforced by Bank Negara Malaysia. Right. So, same as any other regulations, same as any other government agencies, Bank Negara Malaysia, the establishment of Bank Negara Malaysia is an act of parliament, right? And in this particular case, the act of parliament that established Bank Negara Malaysia is called the Central Bank Central Bank of Malaysia Act 2009, or in the market we call it CBA 2009. So I'm just sharing something right here. Actually, this particular Central Bank Act of Malaysia is not new. It's just an evolution of a previous act, right? The previous act, the original act, is known as Central Bank Act Malaysia 1958. That particular act was repealed, except for a particular section in that particular act in 1958 that's still currently being used, Part 3. So under this particular, so I'm going through on this Central Bank Act later, but on an overview of it, this Central Bank Act gives the power for the government of Malaysia to establish that Central Bank Act, right? And then other acts that under the purview of Bank Negara is also is Financial Services Act. And in tandem with Financial Services Act, we have Islamic Financial Services Act 2013, the Anti-Money Laundering, Anti-Terrorism Financing and Proceeds of Unlawful Activities Act 2001, and also Development Financial Institution Act. But mind you, this is just a few of the acts that is under the purview of Bank Negara. There are other also acts that is administered by Bank Negara, like for example, Insurance Act 1996. That's another, and then Money Services Business Act 2011, and then Akta Pendanaan Kerajaan 1983. So all these acts are under the supervision of Bank Negara. They are the enforcement agency to ensure that all these acts are currently being enforced. Right. So, but for today's session, I'm going to focus only on FSA, Central Bank of Malaysia, and also Anti-Money Laundering Act. Okay. So yeah, next slide, please. So Central Bank Act of Malaysia. This particular act was published in the Gazette back in 2009, right? It consists of 100 sections and divided into actually the latest one is 17 parts actually, not 15 parts. So yeah, under each parts, right? Under each part, it's divided into several divisions, right? Under each parts covers areas on, let's say, for example, the regulatory objective of that particular central bank, the need to register, and then Then it consists of 106 sections divided into several parts. And then the objective of that particular act is to provide greater clarity on the mandates of the bank and the necessary powers and instruments to achieve the mandates. Then it also provides the greater or robust governance framework that enhance greater accountability and transparency. And then the Act provides for Bank Negara's role to develop and promote Malaysia as an international Islamic financial centers. So these are the gist of the objective of that particular Central Banking Act. Right? Next slide. So, roles of Bank Negara Malaysia. So under that particular act, right, the Central Bank of Malaysia Act, right, it lays down the principal objective of a central bank. Like for example, in Section 5.2 of the Act itself, it lists down practically what are the primary function of the bank. When we say bank here, it refers to Bank Negara, right? So as you can see, to formulate and conduct monetary policy in Malaysia and to issue currency in Malaysia, to regulate and supervise financial institutions which are subject to the laws enforced by the bank, to provide oversight over money and foreign exchange markets, to exercise oversight over payment system, and so on. So all in all, these are the summary of the principal objective of the bank, right? The most important is to act as a financial advisor, banker, and financial agent to the government. All right. So next slide, please. Okay. As I said earlier, right, this Central Bank Act of Malaysia, it provides the powers and the governance of central bank. Inside that particular act, it defined that for a central bank, right, there shall be a board of directors to the back of the bank, and the board shall consist of the following members: the governor, not more than 3 deputy governor, and not less than 5, but not more than 8 directors. So the current establishment, the current central banks right now, we only have, of course, we have one governor, which is now Datuk Nur Samsyah Muhammad. But before that, we have Tan Sri Muhammad bin Ibrahim. In the market, we call him MI. And of course, before Tan Sri Muhammad bin Ibrahim, of course, Tan Sri Datuk Dr. Zeti. All right. So the current setup is that we have one governor, right? 3 deputy governors for the board, and then 7 board members. So these board members coming from different backgrounds. They are representative from the Ministry of Finance, right? They are representative from the AG or from the Auditor General, and there are so many people from various backgrounds. So right now we have we have 7 board members. So all this information, not to worry, right? You can get it from the Bank Negara website. It's all there, right? It's very just a couple of weeks back, the Bank Negara updated their website. If you are familiar with the previous layout of Bank Negara website, you may have to look into Bank Negara website now with the current new layout, so that all those informations are there. So not to worry about this. So Section 15.1, the governor shall be appointed by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong and the deputy governor by the minister. When we talk about the minister here, the word minister here refers to Minister of Finance. Okay, so the current governor is currently being appointed by the YDBA. Then the deputy governor by the minister themselves. And then the directors under Section 16.1, the directors referred to in paragraph 14.3. 14.3 is referring to the one that the board members of the directors, right, shall be appointed by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong on the advice of the minister. So whatever it is, whatever it is, the members, the top governor, the top management of the central bank are eventually appointed by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. So yeah, so those are the top management or the top governance of that particular central bank. So as I said earlier, Central Bank Act provide the government the governance on how you establish central bank. So these are one of it. Next slide, please. And then, among other things, inside that Central Bank Act, they also have currency, talking about currency and reserve. Of course, in Malaysia, kat Malaysia ni, of course, our official currency is Ringgit Malaysia. It's already defined there. And then there is also a requirement for Bank Negara to maintain reserve of external assets, like for example, gold coin or bullion, notes, coin, bank balances, and money at call in such country or countries as may be approved by a minister or on the recommendations by the board, right? And then they empower the bank to issue treasury bills and also bills of exchange. These are some of the I would say the assets that it is allowed to be maintained by central bank. It's all in the Central Bank Act. And then next slide. Okay, this is very important. Of course, a central bank, right? Central bank, Bank Negara, they are the banker and financial advisor to the government. All top economists, all top research, all the economic statistics, whatsoever. If government wants to make any financial policy or that would affect the economy of the nation, Malaysia, of course, our government need to refer to Bank Negara, right? Because they have all the statistics, they have all the information, right? And then the board shall keep the minister informed of the monetary and banking policy and also the policies in respect of institution in relation to which the bank is conferred with powers. Whatever policy that they want to issue, right, the government, in terms related to the economy, to the financial position of the government, they must refer to Bank Negara because, as I said, they have all the infrastructure to support government to make that particular decisions. Okay, then we have relations with financial institutions. The policy on credit facilities, rates on interest payable, rates of discount, rates of commission and other charges. All these are spelled, right? The powers are given to central bank to decide. Reserve to be held by each banking institutions. Okay, this is something to control, to maintain the liquidity of the market, right? Reserve to be held by each banking institution, like for example, it gives power to central bank to give some sort like a requirement to the bank to maintain a capital reserve in Bank Negara Malaysia, right? Contoh lah kan, for example, right now, banks should maintain at least, if I'm not mistaken, around 2% from their capital in Bank Negara Malaysia. And then this particular figure is reported on twice a month. So from there, they know, the banks know, central bank knows what are the liquidity position of each of the banks. And then any other matter relating to the supervision and regulations of banking institutions and other financial institutions in accordance to Financial Services Act, Islamic Finance Services Act, and Development Financial Institution Act 2002. So as I said earlier, if you can remember, if you can recall the previous slides, right? CBA, the Central Bank Act of Malaysia, is the act that empower the government, empower the establishment of central bank, right? But under the central bank, right, they are empowered to enforce all those regulations under FSA and IFSA and also Development Financial Institution Act. Okay, so far, any questions?
No, sir. No, sir.
Tak ada, eh? So, boleh faham,
Okay.
the overview of it.
Yes.
Okay. just an overview. Tapi to be fair with you, right? Actually, like I said earlier, lah, in our financial industry, right? There are so many acts, right? It's not only under Bank Negara, lah, as I said before. SC also maintain their jurisdiction, especially on capital market. For bank, the commercial bank usually goes to Bank Negara. But for investment bank, sometimes SC and Bank Negara, they overlap each other, right? So for investment bank, whatsoever, it goes to SC. But in terms of governance whatsoever, it goes to Bank Negara. But okay, I'm just sharing this for your general knowledge, lah. So coming back to this particular session, right? So we are talking about Financial Services Act 2013 and Islamic Financial Services Act 2013. So next slide. Okay, FSA and IFSA. Okay, but before that, just a little backtrack. Before FSA, we have BAFIA back in 1989. Right, enforced in 1989. But sama macam other regulations, it evolved. It evolved because of market condition, global economy, new requirements. It evolved. It becomes now known as FSA. FSA 2013. BAFIA, or Banking and Financial Institution Act, repealed altogether. Right? Same goes to IFSA, Islamic Financial Services Act. Before this, we have Akta Bank Islam. ABI, ABI. Year I can't recall lah. Tapi now somewhere in 2012 when they started to revamp this particular act, then when it was introduced, came into force in June 2013, to be specific, 30, and ABI repealed. So now we are referring to FSA and IFSA. Right? Previous slide, please. Previous slide, please. Right? So, what is FSA and IFSA? In general overview, it provides Bank Negara Malaysia with the necessary regulatory and supervisory powers to fulfill its broad mandate. Right? Then it is more comprehensive. Includes increased focus on preemptive measures to address issues of concern within FI, financial institutions, that may affect the interests of depositors. It focuses more on credit, risk, limit, and the effective and efficient functioning of financial intermediation. Financial intermediation means protection of customers, lah, right? And then this FSA, right, and IFSA, previously, under the previous regime, we have several acts that govern different financial sectors. Right? Dulu, BAFIA focus more on commercial banks. Right? For insurance pula, ada different act, Insurance Act. And then for Islamic insurance, we have Takaful Act. For payment system, we have Payment System Act. And Exchange Control Act 1953, this one concerning more foreign exchange. Okay, but FSA, the intention back then is to amalgamate all these particular act into one centralized document. So then it will be easier for us to refer to one document instead of several other documents, right? So that's why they come up with FSA. So as mentioned down there, right? FSA, IFSA, they amalgamate several separate laws to govern the financial sector under a single legislative framework for both conventional and Islamic financial sectors. Right? So as mentioned there, the act that this particular FSA and FSA ganti, all this banking and financial institution act, BAFIA, Islamic Banking Act, Insurance Act, Takaful Act, Payment System Act, and Exchange Control Act. So all this now amalgamate into one stop center, which is now IFSA, and all those Islamic related under IFSA. So it will be easier for us especially those in the market, those especially in the banking sectors too, just refer to one document instead of referring to many other documents to understand further our regulations. Okay, next. Okay, the new laws replace Malaysia's financial sector and so on. This is important to enable the financial system to meet the new demands of financing to Malaysia's economic transformation program. Again, I think these are the objectives. This is the reason why those particular act being amalgamated. I think you can refer it. You can read it on your own. This particular slide, and then next slide, please. And then again, these are the main objective of both acts. And of course, among others, paling atas sekali is to promote financial stability, to enhance growth in financial sector, to provide adequate customer protection, and then to give Bank Negara more powers due to complexity of modern financial environment. And then the most important thing is to strengthen compliance to Sharia, because the government vision is for Malaysia to become the center of Islamic finance. So that's why they come out with the IFSA and then strengthen regulatory framework for Islamic financial institutions. So these are the main objective of amalgamation of FSA and IFSA. Paling penting is to give negara more powers to the, when I say negara, it means Bank Negara lah. In the banking sector, we are in the market, we usually call them Negara for short, right? And then, so these are the main objective. Right, okay, key features of the new legislation. The first point, greater clarity and transparency in the implementation and administration of the law. All right. The law, the new FSA and IFSA, they clearly define, they refine more it is more comprehensive, as I said earlier, the regulatory objective and accountability of negara, right? So that it more focus on in pursuing its principal objective, which is to safeguard financial stability, transparency of Bank Negara's powers and functions under the law. And then a clear focus on Sharia compliance. This is more on IFSA. In particular, the IFSA provides a comprehensive legal framework that is fully consistent with Sharia in all aspects of regulations and supervisions, from licensing to winding up of an institution. Right? Provisions for differentiated regulatory requirements that reflect the nature of financial intermediation activities and their risk to the overall financial system. Okay, so these are the key features, and then okay, this one, provisions to regulate financial holding companies and non-regulated entities to take into account systematic risk. What does it mean here is, like I say, for example, I give you one example. Previously under BAFIA, contoh satu, CIMB. Okay, CIMB dulu dia is a bank, a commercial bank. BAFIA cover CIMB bank. Under BAFIA, CIMB is part of a group. Okay, CIMB contohlah CIMB Holdings. Okay, under BAFIA dulu CIMB Holdings tak cover. Faham tak? Yang cover under BAFIA dulu hanyalah CIMB bank tu saja. The holding company tak cover under BAFIA. So, but then again, along the way, the government realized that all these are under the same group. Right? It contribute to the systematic risk. Right? Something happen at the holding could affect CIMB Bank, contohlah kan. Right? Contohlah kan. So, IFSA, it take all this into consideration. So, it enforce, right? Not only at the bank level, but at the group level. Financial holding companies and non-regulated entities, right, to take account of systematic risk that can emerge from the interaction between this regulated and unregulated institution. So what now under IFSA, they cover sekali dengan holding company dia and other related companies to ensure the overall system tu covered. And then again, and also under the same act, the Minister of Finance may subject an institution that engages in financial intermediation activities to ongoing regulations and supervision by Negara Malaysia. Right? Again, it gives power to Finance Minister to give instruction to Bank Negara to decide if, let's say, Bank Negara found out a certain entity may impose a risk to the overall, to the systematic, to systematic risk of our financial environment to be included in that particular jurisdiction, to be covered, to be regulated by Bank Negara. So it gives powers to the Bank Negara. And then strengthen business conduct and consumer protection requirements to promote consumer confidence in the use of financial services and products. Okay, previously at Nebafia, there's no such provision. Kalau ada pun not that really comprehensive. But the current trend right now, not only in Malaysia, right, but not only in Malaysia, but also I think this is global punya issue, right? The consumer protection here, because the products offered by banks, by the financial institutions are becoming complex. We are not sekarang ni, we are not just simply offering current account. We are not simply offering FD, the higher purchase. It becoming more complex as years goes by. Kalau dulu, kalau macam I believe that you have learned about the FX options apa semua before this, right? Dulu kita ada, let's say contoh lah kan, dulu kita ada kalau ni just to share lah ya, kita ada dulu option ada dua, kita ada American option, kita ada European option. American option, European option, too straightforward. American option, you can exercise it anywhere at any time. European option, you can exercise it at that particular point yang dia prescribe. But now contoh, now we have Bermudan option pula. This is in the market lah. Bermudan option, where it is a combination of these two both lah. I would say Bermudan option, macam saya cakap tadi, European you can exercise it at that particular point of time saja. American option you can exercise it any time within that any time. But Bermudan option is in between. You can exercise it whenever you can, whenever the option expire, but within a specific point of time. So the product evolves. When the product evolves, right, customer sometimes dia orang ni tak faham what are these products. The products becoming complex. So under IFSA and IFSA, it provides greater clarity, or it pass the responsibility to the bank to be more responsible in protecting the customer, their client. Right? It gives more clarity of what are the roles and responsibility to the bank in terms of managing the expectation of their client, protection of their client, what are the consumers expect them to behave. Because these are one of the main items in FSA. And then next point, strengthen provision for effective and early enforcement and supervisory intervention. Bank Negara, right? Negara, they have their enforcement division. They have their, because they are regulators. Of course, they need enforcement officers. These enforcement officers are those involved in investigation, in enforcement, in prosecution. So, and also on top of that, they have an early mechanism to detect any potential fraud or potential risk to the market. So it provide, as mentioned, that it strengthen provision. It give more power to Bank Negara to perform their function as a regulator. Right? They have power to call for audit. They have power to call for anybody, authorized person from the bank to come over to them to provide explanation on certain things. Right? They have the power to investigate. They have power to prosecute. right? So this power is invested in their one of the responsibility of Bank Negara. Well, based on my experience before, I was an investigating officer for Securities Commission. So I was like a police officer, but without the guns and without the cuffs, right? I have the power to arrest. I have the power to make statement. I have to take statement. I have the power to raid any suspect properties, and I do have a power to arrest for charge. So I was an investigating officer for Securities Commission, and of course, myself, at least back then, right? We work together with Bank Negara, our counterparts in Bank Negara investing officers, to enforce that particular regulations, right? Of course, from my experience, because I'm a Securities Commission investigating officer, of course, my power is terhad kepada whatever under the Capital Market and Civil Society. But for Bank Negara, investigating officers, their powers are invested in FSA and IFSA. So they have that particular power to investigate. Okay, next. Okay, so these are some of the pointers under FSA and IFSA. We have obtaining general insurance or takaful outside Malaysia. This one under section 127 of FSA and 139 of FSA. All right. The provision is that the prior written approval of Bank Negara must obtain for property or liability to be insured with insurer outside Malaysia. This requirement has also been extended to the takaful sector. Meaning, right? If let's say our commercial bank here want to obtain property or liability or to be insured outside Malaysia, whatever it is, approval need to be obtained from Negara, from Bank Negara. And then illegal deposit taking and advertisement for deposit. This is very important for a bank, because if you don't have any, if you don't accept deposit, how you're going to perform your business, to perform your day-to-day function, right? Accepting deposits without license granted under FSA remains prohibited, right? That's why a bank is a deposit taker. To be a deposit taker, you must be licensed by Bank Negara, right? This is the number one rule. Okay, and then also, if you're not a deposit taker, a licensed deposit taker, it is prohibited for you to advertise yourself in relation to making such illegal deposit. So kalau you pandai-pandai kata you buat bank, you kata you boleh, it's not only confined to Bank Negara, to commercial banks. Say for a company said that they can take deposit. That's wrong. You cannot take deposit without license by Bank Negara. License need to be obtained from Bank Negara. Okay, and then restriction on use of certain words under section 139 of FSA. Like for example, you cannot simply open a company, buka company, tiba-tiba you dapat ilham, you kata you nak buka bank, you namakan bank A, tak boleh. The word bank itself, right? Insurance or takaful, that give impression to other person, to the layman out down there, to the client, saying that you are a bank, is also prohibited. It's an offense under FSA and IFSA. It's not allowed, totally not acceptable. Without prior written approval of Bank Negara Malaysia. Tapi sekarang ni bukan senang nak buka bank. It's not that easy. Since the 98 punya financial crisis, right? Back then in 98, we had about more than 50 banks, if I'm not mistaken. Now, along the years, right, they amalgamated, they buy other banks. Now we have about 10 major banks. So it's not easy to get a bank. Now, sekarang ni jangan saya share. Sekarang they are more on this digital banking. Digital banking sekarang ni, banking without branches, internet banking. So they are more towards moving towards that, especially during this pandemic where most of the transactions are done via online kan. So latest, if I'm not mistaken, they are Negara offering about 5 or 4 licenses lah untuk digital banking ni. So it is interesting to know what is the future direction kan. Macam mana dia orang nak maintain, macam mana dia orang nak kawal all these digital banks. The blueprint is there, the framework is there, but it remains interesting to see how it's going to be developed later. But right now pun dia bukan issue only to certain people. They are issuing it to all the banks the current bank that we have now. The current bank that we have now, they still not open it to other entities. And okay. And then foreign exchange administration rules. All prevailing foreign exchange administration rules remain effective through the issuance of new notices under the law. Okay, foreign exchange notices ni actually macam I mentioned just now, right? We have this Exchange Control Malaysia Act. It provides control of our foreign exchange. This becomes more important, right, since the 1998 crisis. Right? When 1998 crisis came, right, our ringgit, as you can see, was under attack, right? So they come out with this particular foreign exchange notices to control the trade of our ringgit, right? Because ringgit itself, the currency itself, right, is a commodity, though. It's being traded in the market. That's why bila you trade ringgit tu as a commodity in the market, same as any other product, so same as any goods, when you trade it in the market, it's subject to demand and supply. So when it's subject to demand and supply, that's where you can see sometimes your ringgit up, sometimes your ringgit down, right? So these foreign exchange administration rules try to manage that. That's why certain provisions are there. Like for example, ringgit cannot be traded offshore. It's clearly prohibited. You cannot trade ringgit outside. Siapa-siapa yang ditangkap trade ringgit outside, especially those macam myself, I am in the global markets. Global markets is another term for Treasury Department, right? Treasury Department maintain all these foreign exchange, government bills, whatnot. So those Treasury departments, right, overseas, they cannot trade ringgit outside or overseas outside Malaysia. It's clearly prohibited by Bank Negara, except under approval. If they got approval from Bank Negara, it's okay. Okay. And then, this foreign exchange emissions rule cover that particular area. So Bank Negara really take this matter very seriously. Ada, based on my experience, ada few jugalah dealer, those working in the banks being caught not in compliance with foreign exchange administration, terus kena buang daripada kerja, cannot work in industry anymore. So banking ni kan, just a nutshell, banking industry ni kan, it's not confined only to those working at the branches. If you work in a bank, right, you can find people in risk, you can find people in compliance, audit, and property. Saya buat jaga property banks apa semua. So there are many other sectors inside there lah itself, especially kalau you work kat HQ. So all this, kalau you nak tahu, FSA, of course FSA and FSA is the ultimate rules and regulation that need to be followed. But under FSA and FSA, it gives also powers to Bank Negara, to Bank Negara to come out with regulations and guidelines. Kalau you tak follow regulations and guidelines, you are subject to certain penalties. So under the banks, if you have ada masa you masuk dalam Bank Negara punya website, you go under legislation under bank issued by Bank Negara. There are so many guidelines, policies issued by Bank Negara. Tapi yang tu, mind you, only available to the public. Yang public boleh nampak saja. Tapi we are the bank, we also have another portal from Bank Negara that we can access lagi banyak daripada apa yang ada kat dalam tu. So banking institutions is very highly regulated industry, memang betul pun. That's why audits come in, myself like compliance officer comes in to ensure that all these regulations are in compliance lah, right? That's why compliance is very important because if you not comply, if you don't comply, because bank negara dia datang ke bank untuk conduct their audit, they conduct their review because that is one of their function lah. Sometimes they check on our compliance with code of conduct. Sometimes they check our compliance with capital adequacy requirement. So all this they come. This exercise bukan once in a year tau. It's continuous. It's continuous. Bila-bila dia datang, dia akan datang. Bila dia datang, then we know lah they are checking on something. So that's why a compliance officer like myself must ensure that the business where I'm representing comply with all those rules and regulations. We are like the second liner, right? Second liner before audit and before the bank negara comes in for inspection. So bukan senang nak kerja dalam bank ni pun actually, especially those in compliance lah. It's a rewarding career, I would say. Now pun sekarang ni pun because of the compliance, because of banyak requirement under this particular issued by negara, not only by bank negara, bank, mind you, we are not only operating, of course, the main regulations that we follow, of course, is issued by bank negara lah. Tapi there are other rules and regulations also issued by other regulations, like for example, obviously, macam those issued by SC, those issued by Bursa Malaysia, right? So banyak benda yang kena tengok if you are in compliance punya line. Okay, and then national interest, the notice on dealings with specified persons will be replaced with a new direction issued to section 216 of IFSA. Okay, next. Removal of provision on scheduled institution. A company that wishes to carry on leasing, factoring, development finance, or building credit business. Okay, this one previously known under BAFIA known as scheduled business. No longer required to obtain a written acknowledgement from Bank Negara Malaysia. So accordingly, prior acknowledgement by Bank Negara Malaysia are withdrawn. So withdrawn, tapi whatever it is still under the supervision, under the purview of FSA, because as I said earlier just now, right? The finance minister provides can make that institution subject to FSA. So yeah, and then transitional requirement for existing shareholders of licensed person under FSA provides that no person shall hold 5% or more interest in shares of a licensed person without the prior approval of Bank Negara Malaysia. So dulu lah before this FSA, a single shareholder can hold more than 5% of the total shares in that particular licensed person. When we talk about licensed person here, we refer to the bank lah. Any more than that, negara approval is required. Dulu a particular individual can hold more than 5%. Ada dulu, this was like 10 years ago, more than 15 years ago, ada seorang dulu, a very prominent bankers in Malaysia, pegang that particular bank shares around 60%. Imagine that, seorang saja person pegang 60%. Bahaya tu. Sebab apa? Kalau dikatakanlah dijual semua dia shares, banyak parti beli, outsiders beli, then of course something wrong with the bank lah. So that's why under FSA that no longer allowed unless with the provision of Bank Negara. And then Section 92 FSA provides further provides that no individual shall hold more than 10% of the interest in shares of a licensed person. This one does not apply to individuals holding an interest in shares exceeding this level prior to 30 June 2003. So these are some of the requirements. Okay, any questions so far? Tak ada So boleh faham so far?
Boleh, sir.
Boleh
Boleh.
Okay, good. Senang saja sebenarnya FSA ni. You rajin baca tak baca je. Kalau you tak baca memanglah you tak faham kan. Tapi I was in the industry for about 20 years, right? So along the years too, and because almost every day that is my job lah, audit lah, buat investigation lah, compliance officer lah. I need to understand all this because to function well as a compliance officer. Right? Okay, Financial Services Act 2013. I tak nak pergi panjang-panjang on this particular ni, and then sebab most of it I've already covered before this. Section 6, Principal regulatory objective of this act is to promote financial stability and in-person objective of the bank. The bank shall foster safety and soundness of financial institution. Again, when I said here, the integrity and orderly functioning of the money market and foreign exchange market, safe, efficient, and reliable payment system and payment instruments, fair, responsible, and professional business conduct on financial institution. So those are the regulatory objectives. FSA, they provide the regulatory objective to the bank. So these are the regulatory objectives. Strive to protect the rights and interests of consumers of financial services and products, as I said earlier. Now, the tune from the top is to protect the customers. Sekarang ni customers bukan macam dulu. Customers sekarang dah cerdik-cerdik. They know their rights. Right? They are more educated. They are more complex. So they know their rights. So yeah, in line with that, all these particular protection of consumer rights are put inside that particular FSA. Next slide, please. Okay. The bank shall exercise the powers and perform the functions of this act in a way which considers most appropriate for the purpose of meeting the regulatory objective of this act. Alright, the powers and functions of the bank under this act are in addition to and not in derogation of the powers and functions of the bank under the Central Bank of Malaysia. So whatever it is, the powers of the bank is still under the purview of Central Bank of Malaysia. Right? They cannot go more than that. Okay. And then the bank may establish and authorize a committee consisting of members of the bank to determine the purpose of exercising any of the powers or performing any of the function of the bank under this act. So, central bank, sometimes because they are the regulators, they have the power to establish and authorize a committee consisting of members bank. They can provide all those banks to perform, to act an advisory lah, to get market input, to get market insight, right? To develop the bank and to develop the market. So all these are considered under the FSA. Okay, the bank may either generally or in particular case appoint a person, whether in or outside Malaysia, who is not an officer of the bank, to render such assistance and to exercise only his power to perform any of his function on behalf of and in the name of the bank. See what this particular statement states, that the bank, the central bank, means that they can appoint someone else outside from the bank, from outside externally or internally, who is not an officer of the bank, to assist that particular bank. They have the power to do that. If let's say they think that the bank need to be revamped, they have the power to appoint an external consultant or any other person inside Malaysia to assist that particular bank. Okay, so those are the powers under FSA. Next, okay, section 8(1). This one, as I mentioned just now, no person shall carry on any unauthorized business unless it is licensed by the minister on the recommendation of the bank under section 10 to carry on banking business, insurance business, or investment banking business, or approved by the bank under section 11. So before you run a bank, right? Before you run an insurance business or investment banking, like you see here, investment banking business. Investment banking business pun cover under this particular FSA. Macam saya cakap tadi lah, investment banking ni dia overlap between Securities Commission and Bank Negara. With regards to licensing apa semua, it comes to investment banking, it comes to Bank Negara. But when it comes to what the type of product they can issue, trading license, the person itself, it goes to SC. Okay. And also approved by the bank under section 11. Okay, so those are the authorized business to be carried by authorized person. Authorized person, of course, those are license holder lah for the bank. And then any person contravening section 1 commits an offence and shall, on conviction, be liable to imprisonment for term not exceeding 10 years or to fine not exceeding 50 million or both. So banyak tu. Okay. So those are one of the penalties lah, provided under that particular FSA. Okay. Now, next. Okay, enough about FSA. Now we go to Islamic Financial Services Act. Islamic Financial Services Act ni work in tandem actually with FSA. The content more or less is the same, except for the Sharia thingy, the Sharia aspect of it. So it governs, like for example here, it covered a contract-based regulatory framework. Right? Islamic finance. So the first box, Islamic bank conduct financial intermediation functions using Sharia contracts, distinct risk and reward profile based on Sharia contracts. Okay, the current banking environment right now, we have, if you notice, we have contoh lah, Maybank, we have CIMB Bank, and then at the same time we have Maybank Islamic. At the same time we have CIMB Islamic. So those Islamic bank are governed under IFSA. Those are full license. How they operate, Islamic bank, they are governed under Islamic full-fledged Islamic bank. They have a license for that. Governs under IFSA. Okay. What about other banks? Contoh, the bank where I'm working, right? UOB. UOB does not have an Islamic bank, but they can still operate an Islamic banking. But we call it just Islamic banking window saja. We don't have a full-fledged banking license to operate an Islamic bank. Right? But then again, we can still operate it under window, meaning we can still offer Islamic bank, but Islamic banking product, but we serve it through our conventional branches yang kita ada lah. Tapi we still need to manage it internally. We still to manage, like for example, no segregation. For example, segregation of funds between Sharia and non-Sharia. So benda tu still kena maintain lagi, right? So those are the different lah, between the full-fledged and those bank without the Islamic bank punya license. So under IFSA, it governs more on this particular Sharia contracts lah. Like for example, we have Sharia standards, right? We have operational standards, we have oversight standards, and we have resolution, right? All these are covered under IFSA. I think you can, in terms of all these sales-based contract, equity-based contract, I think you can refer it yourself. Like say, for example, Tawarruk, right? Tawarruk is like, for example, Tawarruk consists of two sales and purchase contracts, right? The first involves sale of an asset by a seller to purchaser on a deferred basis. And then subsequently, the purchaser or the first sale will sell the same asset to a third party on a cash and spot basis, right? So those are example of tawarruk. Ijarah pula ni macam contoh. Ijarah pula macam contoh hire purchase lah. Pembiayaan kereta, right? Kalau you masuk under ijarah ni, you akan enter into this contract and you akan pajak kereta tersebut daripada pemilik. Dalam Islamic bank, the owner is bank. The owner is bank, same as the conventional bank punya concept. The owner of the bank, tapi bank tu instead of macam conventional bank owner, and then you bagi loan to the client, to the hire purchase punya ni, you charge interest. Tapi ada Islamic bank, you sewakan kepada hire purchase punya applicant tu pada kadar sewa yang telah dipersetujui, a profit rate. So that's the difference lah. I mean under this particular contract, and it also defines certain contracts, certain terms that need to be used under that can and cannot be used under the bank, under the Islamic bank. And then fee base, what are the contracts under fee base? Islamic deposits, we have wadiah, we have qard, we have tawarruk, and then in terms of equity investment account, we have mudarabah, musyarakah. because all these all these are covered under IFSA. So not to worry. Memang kalau nak cerita pasal all these syariah contracts pun ya, 1 jam memang tak cukup. Memang banyak actually. I myself pun kadang-kadang I pun macam I still need to refer to this particular syariah. Syariah tinggi ya. Interestingly in the market, right? Macam I contoh, I a compliance macam saya I am a compliance officer, tapi my specialty is not on syariah. Just to tell you frankly, for syariah punya matters, we usually have syariah advisory, and then we also have syariah compliance officer. So they are the one looking into all this syariah. Right? We have Sharia compliance officer, we have legal with Sharia background. So anything with regards to Sharia, we refer to them. But of course, we also need to know lah, because sometimes, like for example, myself, because we have Islamic window in our product, so I need to understand further because I can give advisory or I can give some my review. So these are the overview of the contract-based regulatory framework under the IFSA. And then noteworthy element in IFSA, define clearly the scope of asset and liabilities in Islamic banking. For reporting purpose, they define clearly what are the liability, what are the assets. All right. Say for example, liability, the use of principal guaranteed Sharia contracts such as qard, wadiah, and tawarruk in deposit taking is clearly distinguished from principal non-guaranteed Sharia contracts for investments such as mudarabah and wakalah. Okay, those are liabilities. Then, for example, provision governing takaful business clearly account for the nature of Sharia contracts in takaful operation. It clearly define the takaful business aspect and then provide legal framework for the resolution of Islamic financial institution in line with the elements of relevant Islamic contracts. So, first point, under that particular box, assets managed by Islamic banks are legally restricted from assets of the bank to prohibit any commingling of funds. Dia tak boleh commingle with the conventional part. So clearly defined under FSA. Sorry, IFSA. Okay. So those are noteworthy elements. I think you can read it on your own, but those are some of the items that you need to understand lah. You need to know lah under that particular IFSA. Okay, before we go to another one, any questions so far? Tak ada? Sorry, take break sekejap.
Okay, sure. So we can take 5 kalau nak.
Time out siap,
Right. So because if you can see from the notes, kita ada a few acts to be covered. So we have done FSA and IFSA. The next one, this one is a bit interesting because if you look at the name, anti-money laundering. So we take 5 minutes break before we continue with this act.
Okay, shall we start now?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Okay, this is Anti-Money Laundering, Anti-Terrorism Financing and Proceeds of Unlawful Activities Act 2001. Panjang betul nama ya. Okay. Okay, just an interesting point. When this particular act introduced back in 2000, actually enforced pun in 2002, tapi namanya 2001 lah. Nama dia pendek saja, Anti-Money Laundering Act. Itu saja. So among the market participants, we call it AMLA, short. And then as the years progress, dia tambah pula situ jadi Anti-Money Laundering and Anti-Terrorism Financing Act. Still boleh lagi sebut, tak berapa panjang sangat. So the short name was that back then was AMLATFA, Anti-Money Laundering Anti-Terrorism Financing Act. About 3 or 4 years back, tiba-tiba dia pandang nama dia jadi Anti-Money Laundering, Anti-Terrorism Financing and Proceeds of Unlawful Activities Act. I pun dah lost lah macam mana nak sebut dia sekarang. Tapi still, among the bankers, among the enforcement agencies, we still call it AMLA for short lah. Senang nak refer. So, this particular act, right? The term here, money laundering, what is actually money laundering? So, just want to share also, right? Not only Bank Negara is the supervisory authority for this particular act, SC also is appointed as the regulatory authority to enforce this particular money laundering act. Right? Of course, Bank Negara look from the angle of their jurisdiction under FSA, under IFSA, and SC looks into their jurisdiction under the Capital Market Services Act. Okay, what is actually money laundering? Money laundering is the process where illegal or dirty money is put through a cycle of transaction or wash, so that it comes out the other end as legal or clean money. Kenapa dipanggil money laundering? Originally memang dulu lah, this like cerita 70 years ago. Kalau you ada masa lepas ni, you tengok cerita, you baca pasal one of the notorious gangsters in US, Al Capone. So basically the term launder sebab apa tau? So let's say for example, I am a drug pusher, I jual dadah. So the money that I have I cannot simply put dalam the banking system, because people will see that dia ni kerja apa ya, tapi kenapa banyak sangat duit, dia ni salary earner saja tapi kenapa banyak duit, tentu. So instead of me masukkan dalam straight away into the banking institution, I masukkan dalam business, contoh a front. Back then the easiest way is to masukkan dalam self-service laundrette. Okay, contoh ialah, how do you monitor all this money? Because people that come and go untuk basuh baju, dia masukkan shilling apa semua, duit banyak, cash rich. So that's where the term laundering came. So that's why then the term stuck sampai sekarang. Tapi our money laundering ni became popular for the past I think about 15 years ago lah. Bila mula-mula keluar dulu pun, people still refer it as money laundering. Tapi bila dia orang nak translate itu bahasa, dia become pendobian mata wang, which is quite funny jugalah. Sekarang ni dalam bahasa Melayu dia ialah saya pun dah lupa lah pula. Tapi we still call it money laundering lah. So as the term implies, process where illegal or dirty money is put through a cycle of transaction or wash to become clean money. Okay, now next slide. Okay, so dalam AML, tengok dia punya provision, dia punya acronym here. AMLATFPUAA 2001. Nak sebut pun tak tahu macam mana sekarang ni. Tapi whatever it is, we call it AMLA. AMLA ni contains a provision for the offence of money laundering, to prevent, detection and prosecution, the forfeiture of property derived from or involved in money laundering, and the requirement of record keeping and reporting suspicious transaction by reporting institutions. Okay, the last two, sorry, not to say last two lah, item on prevention, and then the forfeiture of property, prevention and the requirement of record keeping and reporting suspicious transaction by reporting institution. Those two are very important to the financial industries. Because why? Prevention. Why? Kenapa prevention? Prevention is very important to financial industry because a financial institution is where the money comes in. So that's why it's very important, right, for a banking institution to be able to know your customer. Who are they? Where is the source of money? Who are the beneficial owner of that particular company? So that's why it's very important. So that's why at the bank, kalau you open account, macam-macam dia orang required. Dia orang required bill telefon lah, bill rumah lah, bill elektrik lah, whatsoever. And your IC, because they want to identify you. You nak tahu kerja you apa. You nak tahu apa is your source of fund. Right? And then, of course, the last bullet, right, the requirement of record keeping. We are the bank, of course, under AMLA, the requirement for record keeping is 6 years. Tetapi under FSA, the requirement bukan FSA, of course lah, FSA is 7 years. So whatever it is, FSA, we need to follow FSA lah. Tapi under money laundering is 6 years. Okay, we need to simpan whatever record of your transaction, client transaction, agreement, SNP for at least 7 years. And reporting of suspicious transactions by reporting institutions. So reporting institutions ni ada banyak. Usually Bank Negara akan keluarkan the list of reporting institutions. Reporting institution ni siapa tau? Reporting institutions are those that need to report your income, your whatever suspicious transaction, right? Contoh reporting institution ni, of course lah kan, banking, all the Islamic bank, all the money brokers, all the stock brokers, and also your lawyers. Kalau you beli rumah, itu pun they are reporting institution, they akan report, right? Kalau you ada company secretary also a reporting institution, they need to report. So all these people, so this reporting institution is not really confined to banking institution. It covers banyak. Money changer is also a reporting institution. Kalau dia dapat during the transaction, this money changer found that your transaction is very suspicious, they are obliged to report it to Bank Negara. So it's very, very, very wide. Okay, you cannot run away. And then coming back to the reporting just now, right? For a bank, they have this system to detect at least transaction more than, now if I'm not mistaken, 25,000 in and out from your account. If let's say on that particular day you have transaction more than 25,000, deposit or withdrawal, automatically that transaction will be reported to Bank Negara. And they somehow, like macam kat Bank Negara, there is a unit that receive those reports and perform analysis of your transactions. Right? They are red flags, right? So, okay, money laundering offences engages directly or indirectly in transactions that involves proceeds of unlawful activity. So these are some of the offences: acquires, receives, possesses, disguises, transfers, converts, exchanges, carries, disposes, uses, removes from, or brings into Malaysia proceeds of any unlawful activity, or conceals, disguises, or impedes the establishment of the true nature, origin, location, movement, disposition, title. Panjang sangat, boleh baca sendirilah kat situ. So, kalau you perasan kat situ kan, semua ayat dia berakhir dengan unlawful activity. Later, I akan tunjuk you, I can explain to you what is the difference of money laundering offences and terrorism financing offences. Money laundering offences, the money comes in, right? The money that can be charged under money laundering offences are those originated from unlawful activity. Contoh, you terima rasuah, those are unlawful activity. You peras ugut, unlawful activity. Apa lagi? Ragut ni yang kecil-kecil lah, ragut. Itu semua unlawful activity. So those money yang you dapat daripada that activity can be charged under money laundering offences. See, under this money laundering offences, when the act was first introduced back in the year 2002, many people, especially in legal fraternities, think that it's very draconian because it gives a lot of power to enforcement agency in conducting their investigation. Tak ada offences, tak ada act lain dalam Malaysia ni kecuali an act of court. Bukan God, court. By instruction of court. Tak ada any act yang allow investigating officer to freeze your accounts for at least 3 months. Only Money Laundering Act saja, AMLA saja yang allow that. For any other offence, previously before keluarnya money laundering offence ni, you have to obtain court order. Baru boleh freeze any account or property. Tapi AML, AMLA, dia bagi power to the investigating officer to freeze your account if they suspect you involved in money laundering for at least 3 months. And then they have option to extend it for another 9 months. So all in all, if you were accused of under money laundering, you boleh tengok, you can see, I mean, your account or whatever property that you have that subject to investigation can be frozen up to 1 year. Okay, speaking from my experience, yes. Later nantilah, ujung-ujung nanti I cerita kat you my experience before. Okay, money laundering stream. Okay, in a typical environment, in a typical process flow, right? In a typical scheme of money laundering, there must be 3 steps, right? You pergi mana-mana course ke apa ke, if you are later in your working environment, kalau you kerja in bank, benda ni memang important. Dia akan ada satu special session untuk cover money laundering. Dia akan keluar benda ni juga. The 3 steps, the 3 process, you have placement, you have layering, and you have integration. Right? Placement is where the money that you obtain illegally, right, goes into the bank. Right? So that is placement. So that money integrates into the financial system. And then after that, the account holder for money laundering, dia akan pergi ke layering. Layering is where dia akan transfer to banyak sources, right? See, for example, here it says here, transfer the bank account to company X, wire transfer, pergi ke offshore bank, dan transfer ke mana-mana lagi, transfer ke sini, payment ke sana, false invoice apa. So it layered. Banyak source, dia akan layer banyak-banyak. So that's why it calls layering. And then after that, integration. The last process is usually purchase of luxury assets. Because apa? Kalau layering ni kan, dia try to change the appearance of the money. From dirty money masuk layering, dia jadi macam duit yang bersih. Bila duit yang bersih, has the term wash just now. Then they integrate where dia belilah apa-apa aset ke apa ke. Not only asset. Sekarang ni kan, ni dulu punya typical je lah. Typical money launderers dulu dia beli purchase of luxury assets macam contoh kereta, rumah, right? Properties. Tapi sekarang ni not only that. These people becoming smarter and smarter every day. They can always, like for example, pay upfront their credit card. They can always pay upfront their touch and go cards. So all those to make that appearance, the money that they have earlier actually obtained from illegal punya source, becoming a legal punya money. Those are the 3 typical process of money laundering. Next. Okay. This one I already explained just now. Typical, we have placement, layering, and integration. And then, okay, AMLA 2001 came into force in on January 2002 to provide offence of money laundering, and then measures to be taken for the prevention of money laundering and the forfeiture of property derived or involved in money laundering, right? Or matters incidental or connected to that particular offence. And then, okay, next. Okay, as I said earlier, banks or financial institution is the first line of defense to uncover money launderers, because typically when you have money, where you want to go? Of course, besides spending it, of course, you want to keep it in the bank, right? So that's why FI, or financial institutions, is the first line of defense. Right? The framework set by banks and FI to detect money laundering, good compliance is good business. Meaning good compliance is good business, meaning they must know the customers, right? Due diligence procedures for high risk customers, everything whatnot. So those are the governance of money laundering. BQI, FI, and banking institutions considered as the most important channel for them to investigate, right? To prevent money laundering. So examples of suspicious transactions. Customers is evasive or unwilling to provide information when requested, especially customers exchanging currency equivalent to 20,000 and above. This is more towards the money changer punya business. Transactions conducted are of character with the usual conduct or profile customers carrying out such transaction. Like for example, you are salary earner, the bank knows that every month you receive 5,000, but suddenly for your income exceed that, right? So you need to be suspicious on that. So yeah. And then a group of customers trying to break up a large cash transaction into multiple small transactions. So those are some of the red flags. Conducting few small transactions in a day at different branches. Why? Right? Sudden inconsistent changes in remittance wire transfers, send receive transactions. So these are some of the red flags. Next. Remittance wire. So these are the continuation of the previous slide. Customers exchanging small denomination notes into large denomination. See customer frequently exchange local currency into foreign currency without apparent economic or visible lawful purpose. So okay, next. Okay, next. Okay. So the AMLA amendment, Bill 2003, extend the scope of AMLA to include terrorism financing. Just I mentioned just now. 2003 bill amendment bill 2003. Then along that year, if I'm not mistaken, back in 2007 or 8, it becomes an act lah. 2003 that's where terrorism financing comes into the place, right? So just earlier I mentioned to you what is the difference between money laundering and terrorism financing, right? Okay, terrorism financing. The source of money is from illegal activities. So those are money laundering. But terrorism financing, the source of money can come from either source, from legal or illegal source. Of course, illegal source, you know lah, just now, right? Selling drugs, corruption, rasuah, apa semua. Legal punya source, like for example, donation. Contoh, donation. That's why all these NGOs, donation by NGOs are properly scrutinized by the authorities. Because, see, when we talk about terrorism financing, right? Terrorism financing is very wide. So at the end of the day, what they want to prevent is that particular money, that particular money from donation, at the end of the day, sampai ke tangan all these terrorists. See, when this particular AML comes into the picture back in 2002, right? The pressure is coming from, because you know, we are, our market, our financial system are integrated globally, right? When a company, when a country wants to do trade with us in Malaysia, they will look into many aspects. Like for example, contoh, do they have does that the country have a very comprehensive framework to cover any illegal activities, any AML. So what are the guarantees if I do trade with them, the money that they have obtained from business with us, is not end up at any illegal activities. So they look into that. So the pressure on the government to come out with AML, to divide, to come out with an act. That's why money laundering comes in. Act comes in back in 2002. Originally, when this particular act was introduced, right, most of the provision inside there are copied from the Anti-Corruption Act. initially, and also from an act from a similar act in Australia, right? So originally, but along the years, with the experience that we have right now, it evolves lah. So again, and until the current punya the current punya version of this particular AMLA. So this slide, financing of terrorism refers to carrying out transactions involving funds that may or may not be owned by terrorists or that have been or are intended to be used to assist the commission of terrorism. It is prohibited to be involved in fundraising where the person involved intend to use the money of terrorism purposes. Ini contoh yang saya bagi tadi lah. Donation, right? Donation, kalau you pergi donate to one organisation, you don't know that particular donation, where it goes, right? The fund itself, mana pergi dia at the end of the day. Tapi those yang registered with the government, I suppose there's no issue lah. Usually, untuk terrorism financing ni, is not only in Malaysia, tapi biasanya globally, we have a body that in the bank that watch all this and come up with a list of all those terrorist body. So any other financing that have a potential to go to all these countries, especially will be blocked lah. I say, for example, in Malaysia, we cannot simply trade with North Korea. A special approval needed. We cannot simply trade with state-sponsored countries. All these state-sponsored countries, the list of names are issued by United Nations. So those AML specialists, a unit under compliance department in bank will handle all this on daily basis. If there is any update from Bank Negara, they will update it to the bank. So really, AML is a thing now within financial industry. A bank need to adhere to this, and Bank Negara definitely will come after us every year to check on this. So that's about it on AML. If you want to talk about AML later, banyak lagi actually. Actually, for all those acts, actually banyak lagi cerita. Kalau you want to refer one by one, under that particular act, macam contoh tadi FSA apa semua kan. Under that FSA, you cannot simply release customers information. Tapi dalam FSA itu, if I'm not mistaken, under Schedule 11, there are list of person that being pre-approved by in the act itself, where information can be released. This is for in line with customer protection lah. Yang tadi I mentioned, that one under FSA. Banyak lagi area. If you ask me pun, I pun banyak lagi area yang tak cover kat situ. Tapi as a compliance officer, I need to be ready. I need to understand actually what are the intention behind the issuance of those particular act and any guidelines that comes with that particular act. Okay. This one, financing of terrorism, continues from just as now, right? This one, one of my example of the cases that I have investigated back then. This one, back, if you can see tu, I kat belakang tu, waktu tu rambut ada lagi lah. Back in 2008, actually case tu back in 2008. Tapi dia charged in court and found guilty back in 2011. So as I said before, I was an investigating officer for SC. Among the cases, of course, under SC, I mean, we investigated cases related to securities lah, securities offences, those exchanges. Tapi function sama saja macam Bank Negara, macam saya cakap tadi. Bank Negara, they have their own investigating officer. Kalau you ingat lah cerita Pak Mantelo semua dulu kan, the illegal rich quick rich scheme apa semua. So those are under Bank Negara punya purview because they conduct illegal deposit taking. Illegal deposit taking, so that's why under purview of Bank Negara. So macam I dulu, I dekat SC, macam contoh, duit ni dia kata dia ambil daripada customer untuk trade, all falls under, because it is futures, right? It falls under the jurisdiction of SC. So that's where I come in lah. Back then, waktu ni we were like very new to that AML punya act, right? Then we were like macam tak tahu what to do next. What? So practically, literally, I was stationed at the Attorney General Chambers in Putrajaya for about 2 weeks to complete my investigation papers. Case ni one of the cases lah that I have investigated. Even after I left SC pun, I still need to go to court to give my statement as an investigating officer. Case ni you boleh cari lah ni dalam website pun ada cerita pasal ni. Ini illegal deposit taking. The money that they use purportedly traded in futures group and all. So she was charged under money laundering and also trading without license. For trading without license, she was sentenced to 7 years. And for money laundering, for each transaction, satu transaction money laundered, you subject to 3 years. So in this particular case, if I can recall correctly, there are about 100 over of transactions being charged for money laundering. For each transaction, got 3 years, but the judge says that it run concurrently. So in total 7 years lah. Only because under trading without license 7 years, and then money laundering pula for each transaction 3 years. So concurrently 7 years. I remember this case clearly lah. Remember. I pergi dekat dia punya office dekat Rawang dulu. I pergi sana dulu waktu when we conducted the raid. It was like a stock market. So many people. But I don't know this. This particular person, I mean, imagine the return was like the return that they promised was like 8% per week. Kalau 8% per week, bursa pun orang tak masuk lah bursa. 8% per week, you masukkan 1,000 in 1 week, you dapat berapa? 8% out of 1,000, 10% is like 100, so dah you dapat RM80 senang-senang macam tu saja. So it's good to be true lah. Right. So luckily dia maintain dia punya record clean. Semua nama customer dia, semua nama for those yang provide money kat dia. Then the money yang about those yang bagi duit kat dia about 4,000 people, mind you, and all these 4,000 people coming from different level of life. You have those yang salary earners, you have policemen, you have even a court judge pun ada juga. A judge. I was like, okay, fine. How come they can be so naive with all this? If the return is good, so good to be true, then that's it lah, tipu lah tu. Right? So we went there, and then as I said earlier, we confiscated all the records, and under Money Laundering Act, the investigating officer have the power to freeze the account. So in total, I frozen about 5 or 6 accounts, right? And monies inside there is like 8 million only. But based on money trail, the money that she received from all these depositors, so-called depositors, amounted to about 100 million. So the money that we only managed to freeze is about 8 million only. So where are all the money goes, right? Mana pergi lagi around 90 million? Obviously dia pusing lah balik untuk bayar dia so-called 8% dividend. Okay, so eventually dia dah cornered, and then at the end of the day, she was sentenced to 7 years in prison. So those are some of the experience that I have lah when I was an investigating officer. Seronok jadi investigating officer ni, you jumpa macam-macam orang, right? You jumpa macam-macam orang, you jumpa macam-macam ni, and then at the same time you know what you are doing is apa ni allowed, authorized by the act. Same goes to Bank Negara punya investigating officer lah, because they are entrusted to conduct investigation for any misconduct, for any deviant, for any misconduct lah yang lari daripada FSA. So during that time, memang myself and my counterparts in Bank Negara, memang we work each other together most of the time. So, not only Bank Negara, sometimes I work with police, we also work with SPRM, custom, because we are regulators. So regulators come in when there are any issues. And each bank pula, kalau on this particular compliant with FSA apa semua, they are supervision department apa semua, So in the financial industry ni deviate sikit lah pada tajuk ni. Financial industry ni banyak area yang you boleh masuk. You can join investigator, you can join the regulators, you can join the market. And both ways memang I would say it's very rewarding career for me so far lah. Okay, any question? Ada apa-apa lagi question on this particular FSA? Sorry memang topik ni agak boring sikit. I try to act kan. You bukan nak jadi lawyer pun eventually. Tapi when you are in the industry later, right? Especially you are in the financial industry, you need to know this. At least lah. Tapi not to worry lah. Benda ni evolve. Right? Benda ni publish. You can read it. Anyway. Okay. Any questions?
Right. Ada soalan anyone? Any question to ask?
Still have time here? Right.
Ada soalan? Anything you want to ask or you want to clarify?
Nak tanya, is it possible that we have another organisation yang boleh provide loan for customer other than banks, or benda tu sebenarnya scam?
Oh, possibility tu okay. Possibility tu ada. Provide loans right. Besides bank right, you're talking about right. We have like for example CGC, Credit Guarantee Corporation. Right, they are allowed to give out loans. Tapi their loans, their license to give out loans is not covered under FSA. It's the Minister of Housing punya yang tu yang lesen yang tu kan. So they are allowed to give out loans. Kalau scam pula, I cakap kalau macam Along apa semua tu, of course it is a scam lah. I mean they are not a licensed money changer, license to give out loans. Tapi yang macam contoh-contoh semua macam yang you nampak dekat outside, license money lender apa semua, of course they are licensed tapi they are not licensed under FSA. They are licensed under the different ministry. So untuk FSA, banks and inilah. And then there are certain government agencies yang boleh bagi loan jugalah. Yang along-along apa semua tu bukan covered under FSA. They are unlicensed lah, so called. Is that answer your question?
Can I ask a question not related to FSA but related to how to become macam mana nak prepare student to become a good intern, especially macam kami kan daripada finance student, so you yourself daripada UOB, so any tips for student yang akan graduate, what are the requirement yang company bank yang diorang seek from the student?
Okay, this is something out of the topic lah, tapi I boleh je nak cerita kan. I mean, if you want to be intern for a bank, right, usually it depends on first of all, it depends on when you go for interview, they will look into your personality lah. Of course, banking is very conventional punya, a very what's the word? What's not conventional? Strict environment where you will really look into your personality, right? Then if you manage to sell yourself that you are proactive, you are willing to learn, and you are outgoing person, you are willing to accept challenges, I see that is very important lah. And then the first thing first, you need to really accept whatever they assign to you. But then at the same time, when you were accepted, you tak boleh lah duduk saja. So because you know, in banking industry, especially in operations, right, it's very busy. You don't have much time untuk benda-benda lain ni. I mean, especially based on my experience, I have an intern attached to me, right. Usually what I did was I would sit with him or her early in the morning. I will brief him what task that he need to be done or she need to be completed on that particular day, and then itu sajalah. Tapi during the day, the intern if having any problem, you janganlah duduk dekat situ saja. Approach your colleagues. Don't work in silo, right? And then don't work in silo, approach everybody, make friends, because you never know that one day if they really need a person, a staff, they would somehow trigger, you pernah buat benda ni kan, might as well I hire you later for that particular post. You need to show your eagerness, right, to be involved, and then eagerness to learn the trade. Okay, does that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Ada soalan?
I have question.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Sir, what about the PIDM? PIDM kan dia melindungi wang deposit untuk
PIDM lah. Ya, patut ada cover satu topik lah untuk PIDM ni, because PIDM ni actually is an agency owned by Negara. PIDM ni is to provide insurance to depositors, right? Tapi bukan semua lah, dia ada limit lah, right? Untuk deposit, if I'm not mistaken, about 250,000. Let's say for example, that particular bank satu hari tiba-tiba bankrupt, dia tak boleh nak bayar apa semua kan. So that's where PIDM comes in. Dia guarantee whatever money that you have deposited into that particular bank are going to be returned back to you. Kalau you ada 100 pun, you akan dapat balik you punya RM100. You ada 1 million, you ada 10,000 pun, dia akan bayar balik 10,000. Tapi there are limits to it. If I'm not mistaken, the limit is up to 250,000 only. So that's where PIDM comes into the picture. Tapi PIDM ni kan dia semacam regulatory body juga. All banks is a member of PIDM. The PIDM member banks need to contribute certain amount of money to PIDM untuk some sort like macam you boleh analogy that I boleh bagi is like macam group insurance lah. Semua banks bayar to PIDM, and then the amount, how many banks that need to be, how much the money that bank needs to pay to PIDM depending on the rating of that particular bank. The lower the rating, the higher the amount of premium you need to pay to the bank. So all this, right? It's like an insurance coverage to the depositors. Tapi tak semua produk covered under PIDM, mind you. Those yang deposit, yes. Loan tak. Macam treasury products, macam structured investment, such a product, structured investment, no, not covered. Apa lagi FD of course lah covered. Kalau Islamic FD of course covered juga. So those are the function of PIDM basically lah, to provide coverage to to all those depositors. Okay. Okay.
Ada soalan? Any more questions? Tak ada Alright, so if you have no more questions, thank you very much to our speaker for the sharing of the regulations of financial institutions today.
Yeah, welcome.
So,
if you have any questions later kan, kalau you tak dapat nak reach you can always reach Dr. Azianti lah, then she will approach me on that for that any clarification ke whatnot. Okay?
Okay, dekat chat ni pun ada, tak ada soalan alright. So again, thank you very much. And also Group C, thank you for joining us today. You can leave the meeting now, but my group A and Group B, you can please stay for a while. I have some information to share with you. So Cik Syarul, thank you very much. Nanti kalau ada tajuk-tajuk lain lagi, mungkin kita boleh share lagi lah. But for this semester, nanti kita pun dah move towards the end of the semester.
InsyaAllah, insyaAllah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Alright, thank you very much.
Thank you, Cik Syarul.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Have a nice day and stay safe.